Today's video is a beginner-friendly perspective section using SketchUp, Enscape, and Photoshop. Open up your SketchUp file. I've only built the context that's going to show in the section, so don't waste your time building so much context when you don't really need it. And then add your section line. I've already set up mine, and then I can open up Enscape. I'm going to show you the settings that I use in pretty much every render I have. I don't change the settings that often except the direction of the sunlight. So if you like the look of this render, maybe you can copy the settings and see if it would look nice on your render as well. Make sure though that your output is set to Ultra HD and make sure your export object ID and material ID is checked. And then in the main tab, check the rendering quality is set to Ultra. And then take a screenshot. This process from SketchUp and Enscape took probably less than 5 minutes, which is why I love SketchUp and Enscape because they're just so quick and easy. Now comes the fun part, adding this into Photoshop, and the first thing that I'm gonna do is create a white fill over the cut, and I'm using the polygonal lasso tool to select everything, or you can also use the rectangular selection tool. And honestly, if this was like a presentation and I didn't have extra time to work on this render, I'd be so happy with it just as it is. Maybe add a few people and then that's it. I would just use it like that because Enscape just renders it really nicely. But we're gonna add a few artistic touches. So before we crop, we're going to add the material ID and the object ID to help us with selection further down the process. And then I'm gonna crop. So you can see in the rule of third that I'm going to try and align 2 walls of my render to the grid lines, and that makes sure that your composition works really well. And now I'm going to add brightness and contrast, adjustment layer, and also levels to brighten up the overall image. Hold Alt and click between the layers to apply the adjustment layer only to the bottom layer. And I can even go to selective color and really fine tune exactly the color that I want, but I only want to adjust the neutrals, which are the gray tones in the image, and also lift those up. And you can also change it around to make it a bit more warmer or colder depending on the style that you want. I'm going to convert the render into a smart object and go into filter and just sharpen, just to add, you know, a little bit of sharpness. Using the magic wand tool, I can select either in the material ID or in the object ID the sky, and then I can add a color fill. So I found this vintage graphic design pack from Design Cuts. This is not sponsored, by the way. There's so many source materials. There's over like 1,000 one-of-a-kind pieces that I was like, you know what, maybe it's worth it. And I actually really enjoyed using it in the render because you can see there's so much things. There's trees, animals, and decorative elements, but I mainly really enjoyed using the envelopes and the textures. I can then open the file and then just start dragging and dropping a bunch of envelopes and textures to the bottom of my render. And I'm going to add a clip and mask just to make sure that all of those textures only affect the white part of the render or the bottom part. And I'm adding the clip and mask to the group instead of the individual image or texture, and that makes it so much easier because then you can move around the images to make sure that they fit in your render perfectly. And really just have fun with it. Add as many as you want or as little as you want. Hold Ctrl plus click on the clip and mask to select it. I am using a very soft brush and a low opacity just to blend out the edges, and you can do that by painting on the layer mask in black. And now I'm gonna start adding people, and I always used to add real PNG people, like cutouts, and I honestly don't know why, but I've been finding that vector people just look so much better in these style of renders, because I feel like when you use real people, it doesn't make sense because this is not like a real drawing, it's a section and no one would actually see it like that. I don't know, I'm probably not making any sense, but do you feel the same way? Do you prefer these vector people or real PNG people? Wait, that just got me thinking. Am I even real? Are you real? Am I even awake? If you're interested in these vector people, check out my Gumroad because I've added those as a pack that you can download. You can also use layer mask just to clip around some of the people just to make them fit better in your render. And I'm going back into the layer mask of the texture just to paint at the top a little bit, just to make it a bit more bolder because I feel like I erased too much. So in these golden parts of the building, I've actually designed the texture myself, but I wanted to use one of the textures that was in the pack. And I'm using this one, which is a really cool texture. And then I can merge all of them together. And then add a clipping mask. Change your blending mode for it to blend better. And now it's time for trees as well. These are trees that are in my Gumroad if you are interested in buying them. And I really like the tones of those trees in the render because they're also warm colors, which works with my overall render. You can also download the original Photoshop file and the source material for this render on my Gumroad, and you can also watch the longer version of this tutorial on my Patreon. And now I'm just adding textures because why not? And I think this is where the whole image just ties in together because I use this paper texture, which is public domain. I'll have it linked in the description box if you're interested. It's pretty high quality, so I can lower the opacity of it, and I think it just brings everything together. And I'm also adding a warming filter just to blend everything as well. And then you can change the color fill to properly match the rest of your render. You know, I had it white in the beginning, but I'm thinking that a more beige or very light cream color would work nicely. And you can experiment with the different colors. You know, if you made it gray or black, it would totally change the feel of this render. Go to the top of your layers, and your top layer must be visible for this to work. Press Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E to stamp all of the layers and then convert that into a smart object. You could start adding filters like sharpen or go into camera raw filter and adjust the temperature, the exposure and the vibrancy of the colors. And I'm also going to go into FX and add a grain. If you turn off that layer and you turn off the textures, I actually quite like this as well. This is more of a minimal style, but the textures of the vintage or like envelope textures, I feel like it's more stylized. And this is the final render. I actually went back into camera raw filter and made the colors a bit more brighter or bolder because looking back on it, I felt like it was a little bit washed out. And I've also lowered the grain because if you add such a big grain and then you zoom in, from far away it looks amazing, but when you really zoom in, I feel like you lose a little bit of the detail and the sharpness. What do you guys think? If you find any renders or images on Pinterest that you'd like me to create, please let me know and share it with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm Rasha Shururu, and I'll see you next time. Bye.